Namaste and a very good morning to all our dignitaries, guests, faculty members, and staff. We have gathered here for the second day of the National Conference, Acharanam, Indic Wisdom for Sustainable Lifestyle. Yesterday, we heard our experts share their thoughts on the theme Shastric Foundation of Ecological Consciousness and Lok Parampara Health and Ecology, which was followed by deliberations and recommendations for G20. Today, we will be partaking in three more interesting sessions, which will be followed by the concluding session at 4 p.m. On behalf of Indus University, I welcome each one of you to this enriching journey.
Namaste, Jai Hind, Vande Mataram. So this is the first session of second day and our third session for the conference, which is Economic Sutras and Sustainable Lifestyle. So welcome to this third session of Civil20 Life Conference on Acharanam, Indic Wisdom for Sustainable Lifestyle. The session will explore key economic ideas and maxims, sutras, from the ancient Indic texts on economic statecraft governance. In doing so, the relevance of these economic sutras will be discussed with regards to environmental ethics, sustainable lifestyle. This session will also explore the nature of village economy and its associated lifestyle practices will be discussed to understand what we can learn from our own traditional practices. Moreover, the examples of successful eco-friendly models of Indian business and management will be discussed. The following key questions will be discussed in this session. Number one, how do Indic economic ideas inspire us to have a sustainable and eco-friendly lifestyle? Second, what does the practical functioning of a village economy teach us about ecology-based lifestyle practices? And third, can successful business and corporate models be conscious about the ecology and inspire an eco-friendly code of conduct? The key speakers for this session are Dr. Satish Deodhar ji, Dr. P. Kanagasabapathi ji, Dr. Ashish Gupta ji, and Dr. Ashutosh Jani ji. I welcome all the speakers on the dais. Dr. Satish Deodhar ji will be joining us in a while. Thank you. So as we already know the format, we'll be having 30 minutes for each speaker, just to ensure that we are on time. And to begin with, I would first introduce Dr. P. Kanagasabapathi ji. Sir is a professor and former director of Tamil Nadu's Institute of Urban Studies, Coimbatore. He's a professor, author, writer, and a social worker. Known for his pioneering field studies in the industrial and business clusters in different parts of the country, he is involved in studying the economic, social, business, and management systems from the native perspectives. He was one of the key members of the study team that undertook the study of Gujarat kite industry on the invitation of Gujarat government during 2003 and 4. So with these words, sir, I now hand it over to you.
Namaskar, respected elders, organizers of this conference, Center for Indic Studies and Indus University, brothers and sisters. So my topic is Indic Models for Sustainable Economy. India has about 8,000, 9,000 years of economic history as far as we know. But for the last 2023 years now, we have details, macroeconomic details with regard to growth rates, GDP and all. If we see even the last 2 millennia, for most of the period, we remained as the most wealthiest, richest country in the world. GDP details show, OECD studies prove that India remained as the top most player, economic power in the world. Along with China, for more than 80% of the time, India remained as one of the top two economies. That means India had the capacity to remain as the most sustainable economic power. If you say, take the Western countries, no country remained as a power for more than 100 years. No. America is facing problems now. America became a top power only in the year 1913, if I remember right. So India has the capacity to remain as the sustainable economic power. And we all know India was systematically destroyed by the British. Uh, Will Durant called it as the most criminal exploitation of one nation by other nation. So from 33% of GDP contribution 2023 years back, our GDP contribution to the global GDP came down to just 4%. So at the time of independence, in fact, even before independence, but when I tell you the data during independence, almost half of our people were living below poverty line. 18% was the literacy rate. The average life expectancy of Indians was just 32 years. But you see now, after 75 years, in spite of all problems, all difficulties, we are the third largest economy in terms of uh, GDP on purchasing power parity terms. We are the fastest growing nation in the world, and we have the largest number of entrepreneurs in the world. All international agencies, global bodies unanimously say that India has the potential to emerge as the top economic power in the coming few years. So, what is this? This is largely due to the Indic models. So, we have enormous strengths as a nation to emerge as a sustainable power, and our history proves that we remained as the sustainable power for the highest number of years, more than any other country in the world. So now the second part. So my field studies show that these economic sutras that we have learned from our elders, that we learned from our ancient shastras, even remain uh, within our minds, within the elders' mind. So the teachers, and it is happening. We all know throughout India, savings happen. And if we compare it with the rest of the world, huge savings. If you take the last 20 years, our average savings remained always about more than 30%. So why this? Because we were taught from the beginning that we have to save money. Spending more than what is necessary is considered as a sin in Indian tradition. I remember in Sangam literature in Tamil some 2000 years back, an old lady, she was selling in those days milk, curd, ghee. So she said, after returning home, collecting money, she said to her son, the money that I collected from milk, you keep it for monthly expenses. But the money that I collected from by selling curd and ghee, you use it, you keep it, it has to be invested. So 3000 years back, an old lady, what we call today unlettered, uneducated lady, she was saying, I have earned this money, this is for saving, this is for investment purposes. And this is how I give example only from Tamil Nadu. This is there throughout the country. I know that in different vernacular languages, there are sutras for this. And if you say India today, it is one of the highest entrepreneurial nations in the world. In fact, global entrepreneurial monitor report says that India is much above most of the nations, almost all other nations in terms of entrepreneurship. This we have seen across the country. Why? We were taught from the beginning that one has to stand on one's own leg. Viduranidhi says self-employment is the best status in life. So even today, more than 45% of Indians are engaged in one or other self-employment activity. You compare it with in Europe, you compare it with America, it is in single digits, 6%, 5%, 7%. Here, more than 45%. So this is what we learn. Economic sutras, even today, are guiding us. So what are the other lessons that we have learned? You know, it is the culture of this great country that is driving the Indian economy. John Kenneth Galbraith, he was an economist, well-known economist. He was ambassador to India in the 1960s. After 40 years, he came to India just to see what was happening. He toured the entire country. Before leaving for America, he gave an interview in which he said, I quote, we have been we have seen many years of Indian progress, and that is attributable to the energy and genius of the Indian people and the Indian culture. So this is what we come to know wherever we go and study. The culture and civilization, tradition plays a very important role even today in the 21st century. So as a result, we are moving ahead. We have been moving ahead. Growth in spite of unsuitable policies. We all know after independence, initially socialist policies were followed, after that globalization. So there were confusions and contradictions at the policy making level, but India was progressing. This is the point that you have to understand. India was continuously progressing. We can see it from the macro details, and the progress is largely due to the local initiatives. We have been engaged in studying the industrial business centers, clusters. There are more than 3,000 clusters in India. Almost all of them are the initiatives of the local people. From many times from the less educated and the so-called ordinary Indians. In Gujarat, there is Surat. 2 lakh crores is the annual turnover. Who built it? The ordinary Patels from Saurashtra region. Of course, Banias joined. So this is how India has been progressing. And we have unique economic models based on relationships. India is a relationship based society, family oriented society, and we have enormous social capital as a nation. When we went to Rajkot for the first time in 2003-4, they said, sir, we all came here some 5-10 years back to learn business. We worked here for 5 years, 10 years. We went back to our villages. We said, we are going to promote small unit. Then the entire village gave us money. We have recorded it. It's available in detail. So they said, villages gave money. Our own friends, relatives, other people, they gave money. So this is how social capital is largely prevalent in India. We have seen in Tamil Nadu some 70 years back, there was a very ordinary poor community. They were all Palmyra climbers. They did not know what to do, so they developed their own mechanism called Mahamai. They went before the Amman temple and said, whenever we earn money on a monthly basis, we have to give 0.5%, 1% to the common pool of funds. They created a system called Mahamai. As a result, they helped others to promote businesses, and today they are one of the largest business communities in India. You must have heard Tamil Nadu Mercantile Bank. Once upon a time, Asia's largest profit-making company, banking company, it was promoted by them. So in 2021 World Development Report published by World Bank, it says that Tirupur people in Tamil Nadu, India, are making the cheapest bunions, cheapest innerwears in the world because they mobilize funds through network of friends and relatives, social capital. So these are all our strengths. And if we see these 3,000 clusters, no one single dollar of foreign investment, completely mobilized by the local people. And even if we see the corporate models, they are completely different from that of the West. In finance, we say for every, let us say, a company has some 10 crore capital, then that means they have to have at least some 10 crore as reserve account as per the Western theories. Why? Whenever there is a difficulty in future, they have to have this reserve. So this 1:1 is the norm, textbook norm that is followed in Europe and America. If you see India for a 10 crore company, there will at least be 200 crore reserve or 300 crore reserve. We keep more money than what textbook says because this is our tradition. As a result, our companies continuously grow even when they face difficulties. They will not be closed. So this is the system that is there in India. And India, families, particularly women folk, play a very dominant role in economy. Wherever we go and meet entrepreneurs, they'll say, sir, our success is due to my mother, my wife, my grandmother, my sisters. I always quote one example. You see these Arya Bhavan, Ananda Bhavan, Vasanta Bhavan hotels. When we went and interviewed them, 21% of the promoters said the initial capital for us were supplied by our married sisters. Sisters go to their husbands' families, compel their husbands to give money to the brother when promoting. Have we ever discussed about it? Role of our own sisters, our own mothers, our own grandmothers. This is how India is functioning. All these jugaad and innovations that are happening here in India are due to the native wisdom of our people. Indians have enormous economic and business wisdom. This we have to understand. We have seen during Corona times, 2020 March, we did not have any vaccine. We did not have the PPP equipments that our doctors and nurses wear. So government came up with an initiative, and by within 3 4 months we became almost self-sufficient. By December 20, if I remember correct, we started to export, and that is the capacity of Indians. So we have enormous strengths as a nation to emerge, to remain at the as the sustainable economic power. So what are the recommendations? I have recommendations for 4 5 different sections, categories. One, as far as the government is concerned, of course, at the central government level, they are implementing this Atmanirbhar Bharat. State governments also should do it. State governments, we have to make a recommendation that all the state governments should do this. Atmanirbhar Bharat, Atmanirbhar Gujarat, Atmanirbhar Rajasthan, Atmanirbhar Tamil Nadu is possible to a large extent. Of course, we are all the sons and daughters of Mother India. We collaborate with each other. But this Atmanirbhar, to achieve this Atmanirbhar status, we all have to help. Second, the government has to find out, nurture and promote smaller clusters, industrial business cluster centers, particularly those involving skilled artisans and unique products. For example, throughout India, we see these sari making clusters, unique saris. The sari from one center will be different. I'll quickly go through. One center will be different from the saris made by the other centers. We have seen in Maheshwar in Madhya Pradesh, making unique products. They are of exportable quality. So it is the duty of the government to find out, nurture, and encourage them. Then we have to develop businesses. States, this government should develop businesses associated with our culture and civilization. I remember in 2003, Tamil Nadu team was invited by the then chief minister to study kite businesses because it is associated with Gujarati culture. At that time, the turnover of Gujarat kite business was 30 crores. Today, after the initiative of the government, it's almost 900 crores. One state government doing it. So, as far as the educational institutions are concerned, they have to take up surveys, studies, and research relating to the native systems, and they have to disseminate this. This is what they have to do. They are supposed to do. If you want to study Gujarat industry, only Gujarat institutions can do it very easily. We have to do it. And Indianization does not mean uh, Indian authors interpreting Western theories. It means bringing out the Indian economic and business systems out and then disseminating this. Educational institutions should study native Indian business belief systems, sutras, practices, and connect them to the contemporary functioning systems. This is what we have to do. And fourth, we have to develop expertise in vernacular languages, in Sanskrit, study the ancient Shastras, and relate it to the contemporary systems. This is what we have to do. As far as the civil society is concerned, civil society, particularly the educational sections, should be told about the strengths of Indian economic and business systems. We have to discuss it, and it is our duty to pass it on to the next generation and help the educational institutions to teach this. This is very, very important. Even if we make smaller studies, it will be helpful. I remember this Wharton University came here some 10, 12 years, 13 years back. They made a study about the leadership pattern, and then they came to know Indian leadership patterns are much, much superior than any other country in the world. They wrote an article in the Harvard Business Review in 2010. They gave the title Leadership Lessons from India. So this is what we have to do. And as far as business enterprises are concerned, they have to implement practices based on Indian culture. I know a company in Coimbatore with a foreign name, of course, Habasi Taikoka, to encourage family values, what they did. They gave extra salary to those employees, male employees, who live with their parents. At that time, they were giving 5,000 more. salary more if they live with their parents. Then for female employees living with in-laws, they gave additional 5,000 increase, 10,000 increase. So this is how some Indian companies encourage family values. When I was discussing with the then chairman of Jani Irrigation Systems, he is no more. He said, I am going to implement this in all my companies. So this is how they have to have practices. They can establish practices, and business enterprises can celebrate, participate in local festivals, mix with the local societies, and they have to organize classes to employees. I have seen some of the companies doing it, teaching them these ancient shastras, etc. This is possible. And as far as the society, families, individuals are concerned, we have to teach our children, our families, these economic sutras, our belief systems, our sayings. These sayings are available in all vernacular languages and practices from young age. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir. So Satish, Dr. Satish Deodhar ji has joined us. I invite him on the dais. Please welcome him. Thank you, sir, for joining us. Now, our next speaker is Shri Ashutosh Jani ji. A brief introduction about him. Shri Ashutosh Jani ji is learning about the rural societies by living with them in the eastern part of Gujarat. Formerly an engineer from IIT Madras and having worked in education in the rural areas of Gujarat, Ashutosh ji, along with his wife Sneha ji, is interested in learning and documenting traditional knowledge systems and traditional crafts. Having traveled across more than 15 states of Bharat, especially in the remotest villages, Sneha ji and Ashutosh ji are keen on understanding and preserving this traditional knowledge. Presently, they make clay and wooden sculptures, wooden toys, natural homes using clay, stone, lime, wood, and bamboo, and teach all of this and the entire process of khadi, right from cotton picking to fabric making, to the students of Gotirth Vidyapeeth. They are learning and realizing the true sense of Bhartiyata by working towards opening up more and more avenues for the expression and sharing of experience based understanding emerged from the traditional societies. They have also started 2 YouTube channels to share many of their learnings with the interested audience. Now, may I please invite him on the dais?
Namaskar, everyone. So, as we know, the topic is about economic sutras. So, let's first of all give it a thought about what the global economy is like, how it is run today. We all know that almost every nation is not following the gold standards anymore, right? So, we are in a scenario where the prices of every commodity are bound to rise continuously, endlessly. So this is something which can be termed as a continuous depreciation of global currency. It's not that the prices are increasing here. If milk was available at 20 rupees a liter a few years back, if it has come to 50, 60 rupees a liter, the same scenario is there with the US. It might be a few dollars and now it's a little more. It might be a few euros a few years back, now it's a little more. So it's not that one currency is strengthening and the other currency is weakening. Each and every currency, without any exception, globally is weakening, is becoming cheaper and cheaper. Yeah, relatively one might be weakening slowly and one might be weakening faster. That's a different scenario altogether. But on the absolute scale, everything is weakening. So what kind of society we are living into? We are continuously devaluing the currency, the cash that we possess. So we all know what happened in Zimbabwe a few years back. We all know what happened in Venezuela a few years back. Right? People had to carry truckloads of currency to buy a packet of bread. Those days are not far for almost each and every country if we continue following the same path. Right? Or else we might have to print currency notes of 10 lakh rupees, 1 crore rupees. Those days are also not far. Right? So, giving it a thought as to what trap we are into. Now, I'll just take a small detour from here and we'll pick this up later. Uh, when we talk about economy, recently, a few years back, Shashi Tharoor made some bold statements against the UK about the reparations and all. So we proudly say that we were almost 33% of the global economy in the 19th century, 18th century, etc. But let's just wait for a while and give it a thought on what GDP is. Let's assume a hypothetical scenario where somebody is going by car, you meet with an accident, Your bonnet is totally broken, tires are broken, the person is having some injuries, so the car will be sent away to the workshop, new parts will be manufactured, new parts will be fixed up, labor cost will be paid, insurance company will be receiving premium regularly, so insurance company will be paying for that. The person is having injury, he'll be hospitalized. Since he is hospitalized, he'll be undergoing a surgery or some other medical treatment. Medicines will be manufactured, doctors will be paid some amount. So ultimately, it's a great financial transaction. To meet with an accident is a boon for GDP, isn't it? So, at the very outset, we need to think about it. What parameters do we believe are best for our to evaluate our wellness? Being best in GDP, does it ensure that we are doing well? Nowadays they've got so many other parameters, right? Human Development Index, some happiness index, and so many indices. We always get caught into these numbers because the West is always hell bent onto creating numbers and creating webs around the numbers, and we get caught into it. But we do not pay attention to the kind of parameters that they are dealing with. So if we understand, we should be able to defy the parameters. It's okay. GDP could be something. GDP could be good, but do we understand that GDP is not the right measure to evaluate our wellness? That's the thing I want to leave you with. I want you to brainstorm over it. There are not definite answers to many questions, and it's rightly said that it's very important to stay with the question for a long time. Only then the answer appears in front of us. Similarly, so it is said that wealth generation is happening here and here. If you carefully look at the entire world, wealth generation cannot happen apart from the sun. The forest and the agriculture are the only two activities which are generating wealth. Apart from that, everything else is conversion from one form to the other. And we talk about wealth generation all the time, and we don't even look at the only and the best wealth generation options we have. So we are so much caught up into the Western framework of numbers and of indices and of details and reports and numbers, all these things. Similarly, I was having some discussion with some speakers yesterday evening at the time of dinner. We were talking about the developed countries and developing countries and underdeveloped countries. What is the definition of a developed country? What's the definition of a developing country? There is no definition whatsoever. All this came into existence post Second World War. Post Second World War, the West had to divide the world into a few parts for their own good. And it is said that Harry Truman, then US president, he delivered a lecture somewhere and he just threw a random idea and people picked it up. So we are so good at picking up whatever the West throws like a garbage, and we always pick it up. And we proudly say we are a developing country. Now, how can we be a developing country where safety for almost everyone and anyone is almost ensured, and there some child goes into a school and shoots so many people? How can that be a developed country? We just don't give it a thought. I'm just throwing some random examples to throw light on the fact that we need to be very, very cautious while dealing with these parameters and these definitions. These definitions are actually creating a web just like a spider to catch hold of us. And we keep fighting them that no, we'll win over you in GDP, we'll win over you in this index and that index. That is not something we have to do. That's not our way of looking at Arthashastra. So if that is not our way of looking at Arthashastra, then what is it? How do we say that we are doing good economically? As we said, accident is a good exercise for GDP. So if that's not something we want to do, what do we understand as the best situation in terms of economics from Indic perspective? We all can ponder about it. So maybe we'll talk about this also in a little while. So these parameters that we talk about, they need to be challenged. The developed countries and all that we say, that is, we know that that all has happened by looting the Southeast Asia, Africa, and when we talk about sustainability, the first thing that has to be challenged is this American dream. That is just not sustainable. If I mean, Gandhiji very rightly said in Hind Swaraj that if we want to follow that path, maybe we'll have to import 2 or 3 Earths to loot them because we are such a huge country, and it's not even our blood to do that. So economically, it is very important for us to look at the world and to ponder about it, what direction we should be taking. सो ये इन्फिनिट मॉडल ऑफ ग्रोथ वाली जो बात है, ये जो जीडीपी वाली जो बात है, ये सबके पास एक बड़ा बंगला होना चाहिए, सबके पास 2-3 गाड़ी होनी चाहिए, ये जो सारी बातें, ये सारी बातों के ऊपर हमें सोचना पड़ेगा, इनको चैलेंज भी करना पड़ेगा। अब मैं कुछ बातें बताना चाहता हूँ हिंदी में। अब इसलिए मैंने स्विच किया क्योंकि अब तक तो दुनिया की बातें चल रही थी, अब अपने देश की बात चल रही है। कुछ ज़्यादा किताबें विताबें पढ़ी नहीं है, हम लोग गांव में घूमे, जैसे अभी बताया रितुल जी ने। गांव में घूमते घूमते हमने कुछ अनुभव किए हैं, और ये सब अनुभवों के लिए सबसे बड़ा प्रेरणा स्रोत रहा हमारे गुरुजी रविंद्र शर्मा जी, दिलाबाद तेलंगाना में। उनके द्वारा बताई गई बातों के विषय में, सूत्रों के विषय में आशीष गुप्ता जी विस्तार से बात करेंगे, तो मैं उस विषय में अभी नहीं जा रहा हूँ। उनके साथ रहकर हमें भारत को अपने नज़रिए से का देखने का वरदान मिला, मैं कह सकता हूँ, क्योंकि इससे पहले हम अपने देश को हमेशा पराई दृष्टि से देखते थे। जैसे हमने इंडाइसिस की बात की, हम उस तरह से देखते थे कि मेरा देश कहाँ पर खड़ा है, हम कहाँ पर है, उसके लिए हमें हमेशा पश्चिम से प्रमाण पत्र की आवश्यकता होती थी। तो उससे हट करके हम कहाँ पे हैं, ये हम स्वदृष्टि से कैसे देखना सीखें। तो ये किया, और फिर हमने तय किया कि हम एक गांव में रहेंगे। गुजरात के छोटा उदेपुर ज़िले में एक छोटे से गांव में हमने रहना चालू किया। वहाँ पर रहकर हम कोई ट्रेनिंग नहीं देते थे, किसी को कुछ नहीं सिखाते थे, क्योंकि हम सीखने के लिए गए थे, हम सिखाने के लिए नहीं गए थे। वी आर वेरी क्लियर कि अगर हमें लगता है कि हम कुछ सिखाने के लिए गए हैं, तो एक एरोगेंस आता है आप में, एक ईगो डेवलप होता है। सो वी वर वेरी क्लियर, वी वर डाउन टू अर्थ, कि हमारे पास जो भी XYZ जानकारी है वो हम कमरे में बंद करके रखेंगे। हम जब गांव में किसी के पास में जाएंगे तो हम एक कोरी पार्टी की तरह जाएंगे और उनके साथ बात करेंगे, उनके अनुभव से सीखेंगे। किसानों से सीखेंगे, गांव की महिलाओं से सीखेंगे, कारीगरों से सीखेंगे, बच्चों से सीखेंगे। तो ये सारे अनुभवों में हम बगल के गांव के कुम्हार के यहाँ पर जाने लगे। मिट्टी का काम हमें बड़ा पसंद है, मिट्टी का काम, लकड़ी का काम, हाथ से कुछ काम करना पसंद है हमें। खादी का काम, ये सब काम हम करते रहते हैं। वहाँ पर खादी का काम करने वाले कोई है नहीं, तो वैसे हमारे कोई दोस्त बने नहीं। मिट्टी लकड़ी का काम करने वाले काफ़ी सारे लोग हैं वहाँ पे। तो उनके यहाँ जाकर हमने जब देखा, बस घर में पति पत्नी दो ही लोग थे, ना कोई उनका बच्चा था, ना माता पिता भी नहीं थे, गुजर गए थे। दो लोग रहते थे, बढ़िया मटके बनाते थे, बहुत सारी चीज़ें बनाते थे, और उनके यहाँ मटकों का बड़ा सा ढेर लगा हुआ होता था। तो एक बार हमने पूछा उनसे, उनका नाम राजू भाई था, अभी तो चल बसे। पूछा, राजू भाई ये इतने सारे मटकों का आप क्या करते हो, कहाँ बेचते हो, यहाँ से ट्रक भर के ले जाते हो, कैसे करते हो, ट्रक का किराया होता होगा। हम लोग वही करेंसी के टर्म्स में कैलकुलेट करने की कोशिश कर रहे थे कि इनको कितना रुपया मिलता है। तो उन्होंने कहा कि नहीं, ये तो हम नहीं बेचते हैं। फिर नहीं बेचते तो बनाते क्यों हो, घर के लिए चाहिए तो दो बना लो, चार बना लो, हजार हजार मटके बने हुए पड़े हैं। तो उन्होंने बताया कि हम हर साल दिवाली से पहले पहले या दिवाली के बाद बाद में उसी समय पे गांव में जा कर के सबके घर पे दिया होता है, कढ़ाई होती है, हांडी होती है, मटका होता है, कुछ कुछ वहाँ के नियम है कि 5 या 6 प्रकार के मिट्टी के बर्तन होने चाहिए, वो हर घर में जाकर देते हैं। हर घर में जाकर वो देते हैं। फिर हमने पूछा कि अच्छा ये बताइए पूरे सेट के कितने रुपए होते हैं, तो बोले एक भी नहीं। इतना सारा आप दे रहे हो, उनके घर जाके दे रहे हो, एक भी रुपया नहीं, बोले नहीं। फिर क्या होता है, तो बताया उन्होंने कि दिवाली आती है अश्विन के मास में, अश्विन के बाद कार्तिक, कार्तिक के बाद मार्गशीर्ष। तो मार्गशीर्ष का जो मास है, उस समय वहाँ पर धान की फसल तैयार हो जाती है। मैं जिस इलाके की बात कर रहा हूँ वहाँ पर धान और मक्का, ये दो फसल प्रमुख हैं। तो उन्होंने बताया कि धान की फसल तैयार हो जाती है तब, और छड़ाई होकर चावल निकल जाता है उसमें से। तो उस समय पे गांव में हम घर घर जाते हैं एक बड़ा सा टेम्पो लेकर के, और जिस घर में जाते हैं वो घर वाले अपने यहाँ से अनाज बहुत सारा निकाल कर हमें दे देते हैं। वैसा ही होता है फाल्गुन या तो चैत्र मास में, जब मक्के की फसल तैयार होती है, फिर से हम सबके घरों पे जाते हैं, हम देते कुछ नहीं है, ये लेते हैं। तो वापस से हमने पूछा कि बताइए कितने किलो लेते हैं। एक घर से 5 किलो लेते हैं, 10 किलो लेते हैं, कितना लेते हैं। तो बोले ये हमारे ऊपर निर्भर नहीं करता। लेकिन किसके ऊपर निर्भर करता है, ये तो किसान के ऊपर निर्भर करता है कि वो हमें कितना देगा। कोई घर से हमें 2 किलो भी मिलता है, कोई घर से हमें 20 किलो भी मिलता है, जो भी मिलता है वो हम ले लेते हैं। उनके घर में आप मानोगे नहीं, सालाना 5 टन अनाज आता है। कितना? 5 टन। किसके घर में 5 टन अनाज दो व्यक्ति के घर में सालाना इस्तेमाल होगा? संभव ही नहीं है। तो उनके उनकी फूड सिक्योरिटी का क्या। हम जैसे अभी रिकमेंडेशंस की बात चल रही थी, तो मेरा तो रिकमेंडेशन ये है कि भारतीय अर्थव्यवस्था का डी गवर्नमेंटलाइजेशन होना चाहिए, डी कॉर्पोरेटाइजेशन होना चाहिए। समाज के पास पूरी क्षमता है, बस सरकार कुछ चीज़ों में आना छोड़ दे। क्या है इसकी सोशल सिक्योरिटी, समाज ने इतनी सुंदर व्यवस्था बना के रखी है। अच्छा ये सब करने के बाद भी गांव में जितना देना बनता है, उसके बाद भी वो उससे अतिरिक्त बटके बना लेते हैं, वो बाजार में बेचते हैं। अच्छा उसके लिए भी उनको जाना नहीं पड़ता, व्यापारी खुद अपना साधन लेके, अपना वाहन लेके आ जाता है, उसमें ये लोग भर के ले जाते हैं। उनकी जो करेंसी की नीड्स है छोटी मोटी, बहुत कम नीड्स होती है करेंसी की गाँव में। गाँव में आराम से 2-3 हज़ार में महीना चल जाता है, और वो 2-3 हज़ार में राजा के ठाट के जैसे चलता है। घर पे 10 मेहमान आ गए, आप बढ़िया देसी घी के लड्डू बना के खिलाओ, फिर भी आपका 2-3 हज़ार, 4 हज़ार, 5 हज़ार से ज़्यादा खर्चा नहीं होने वाला है। तो करेंसी नीड्स तो बहुत कम है, बाकी सारी नीड्स उनकी वहाँ पर सेटिस्फाई हो जाती है। तो इस प्रकार के जीवन को जब हमने देखा, तो पता चला कि ये समृद्धि यहाँ पर दिखती है। ऐसा ही एक अनुभव हुआ था हमारा आदिलाबाद में, जब हम गुरुजी के यहाँ आश्रम में थे। वहाँ पर एक कुम्हार आया करता था मिट्टी का काम करने के लिए, विजय था उसका नाम। तो हमने जब उससे पूछा, तो हमें बता रहा था कि हम भी ऐसे ही करते हैं। तो उस समय दालों के दाम बहुत हमारे यहाँ पे बढ़ गए थे। आपको पता होगा, 3-4 साल पुरानी बात है कि जब दाल के दाम बढ़े हुए थे, तो कई सारे लोगों के घर में दाल बनना बंद हो गई। तो हमने पूछा इनसे कि आप बताइए कि आपको कोई असर हुआ कि नहीं हुआ। बोले नहीं, हमें कोई असर नहीं हुआ। क्यों नहीं हुआ? तो दाल के दाम तो दुकानों के लिए बढ़े हैं। किसान तो पहले जिस दाम में बेचता था, आज भी उसी दाम में बेचता है, और हमारा व्यवहार किसान से है, हमारा व्यवहार दुकान से नहीं है। और चूंकि हमारा व्यवहार किसान से है, हमें उसमें कोई आपत्ति नहीं है। तो उस समय भी मैंने कुछ एक लिखा था कहीं पे कि विच डायरेक्शन वी शुड गो टू, विजय और वेनेजुएला। उसी समय वेनेजुएला क्राइसिस भी हुई थी। तो कहीं ना कहीं अर्थव्यवस्था को लेकर के ये सब चीज़ों के ऊपर ध्यान देना बड़ा ज़रूरी है। एक दो छोटी सी बात रख के मैं अपनी बात को समाप्त करता हूँ। हमारे यहाँ अन्न, दूध, न्याय, शिक्षा, चिकित्सा का व्यापार वर्जित था। ये सब का व्यापार इसलिए वर्जित था क्योंकि ये सबकी मूलभूत आवश्यकताएं हैं, ये सबको मिलना ही चाहिए। दूध का भी व्यापार वर्जित था, घी का नहीं था। घी नहीं मिलेगा तो भी चलेगा, दूध नहीं मिलेगा तो नहीं चलेगा। ये अलग अलग प्रदेशों में अलग अलग हो सकता है। हमने कई सारे गाँवों में ये सब होते हुए देखा, उनसे पूछा। चिकित्सा की भी कल बात चल रही थी। तो चिकित्सा में भी हमारे यहाँ पर ये व्यवस्थाएं देखी गई है। धर्मपाल जी की किसी पुस्तक में पढ़ा था, मुझे पुस्तक का नाम अभी याद नहीं है, छोटी सी कोई पुस्तिका थी, उसमें लिखा था उन्होंने कि हमारे यहाँ की व्यवस्था में ये हुआ करता था कि गांव में यदि बीमारी फैलेगी, तो वैद्य को किसान की तरफ से, कारीगरों की तरफ से जो भी दिया जाता था, वो उसकी राशि कम होगी। आज की अर्थव्यवस्था, चाहे वो एलोपैथी हो, चाहे होम्योपैथी हो, चाहे आयुर्वेद हो, चाहे नेचुरोपैथी हो, वही व्यवस्था है कि समाज बीमार होगा तो चिकित्सक का आर्थिक लाभ होगा। यदि हम चिकित्सा के आर्थिक पक्ष को देखें, भारतीय व्यवस्था ये कहती है कि समाज में बीमारी फैलेगी तो चिकित्सक को आर्थिक रूप से घाटा होगा। ये सूत्र हमारे ध्यान में होना चाहिए। जब तक हम इस सूत्र को ध्यान से नहीं देखेंगे, कोई भी पैथी समाज को स्वस्थ नहीं करती, क्योंकि हर एक पैथी का कल्याण समाज को बीमार करने में है। ये सादी सी बात कई बार हमारी समझ से छूट जाती है। तो खैर, ये बहुत और भी कुछ उदाहरण हैं जिसके ऊपर अभी मैं नहीं चाहता हूँ, और एक छोटी सी बात करके अपना यहाँ पर बात खत्म करता हूँ। तो ये जो बड़ी बड़ी बातें होती है, हमने सोचा कि इसे हम कैसे अपने जीवन में उतारें। तो हमने गुरुजी की प्रेरणा से 2017 के साल से या 16 के साल से गणेश जी की मिट्टी की मूर्तियाँ बनाना शुरू किया। यहाँ पे जो मूर्ति आप देख रहे हैं सामने, वो मूर्ति मेरी पत्नी ने, स्नेहा ने बनाई हुई है। तो हम लोग हर वर्ष कुमार के यहाँ से मिट्टी ला के 10-15-20 लोग मित्र सब मिल करके मिट्टी बनाते हैं। कश्यप ऋषि के द्वारा रचित एक काश्यप शिल्प सूत्र है, उसमें गणेश जी के 32 स्वरूप दिए हुए हैं। तो उन्हीं स्वरूपों को हम बनाने की कोशिश करते हैं। ये उसमें से वीर गणेश का स्वरूप है, जिसके हाथ में एक तरफ 8, दूसरी तरफ 8, कुल मिलाकर 16 हाथ है। 16 हाथों में अस्त्र शस्त्र है। वीर गणेश है, युद्ध मुद्रा में है तो खड़े हैं, कुछ बैठे हुए अवस्था में होते हैं। अलग अलग उनके स्वरूप है। तो ये हम बनाते हैं, और ये मूर्तियाँ हम बेचते नहीं हैं। हर साल करीब करीब 40-50 मूर्तियाँ बनती है, कभी 30 बनती है, कभी 35, कभी 55। और ये मूर्तियाँ हमारे जो यजमान हैं उनको दी जाती है, उनको बेची नहीं जाती। और हमारे यजमान बदले में हमें पैसे नहीं देते, हम पैसे एक्सेप्ट नहीं करते हैं। हम कहते हैं कि आप किसी भी जैविक किसान के पास से कुछ लाकर हमें दीजिए, आप देसी गाय का घी हमें दीजिए, या तो आप कोई किसान या कारीगर के द्वारा हाथ से बना हुआ कुछ सामान हमें ला कर दीजिए। आप हमें 100 ग्राम गेहूं दोगे तो भी चलेगा, आप 10 किलो सोना दोगे तो भी चलेगा। तो कितना, उसके ऊपर हमारा अधिकार नहीं है। उनके मन में जो भाव प्रकट होता है उस तरह से। और ये 6-7 वर्षों से ये प्रक्रिया चल रही है। बहुत सारे लोग आते हैं मूर्ति सीखने के लिए। तो एक तो उसके लिए भी आप सबको निमंत्रण है कि आप लोग, अभी अगले महीने से हम काम शुरू करेंगे, कि आप सब में से जो भी आना चाहे हमारे यहाँ पे आ सकता है। कार्यक्रम घर में ही होता है, कोई संस्था नहीं है, परिवार भाव से ही पूरा काम होता है। और उसी तरह से एक और काम हमने शुरू किया है पिछले 5-6 सालों से, कि हम लोग सेंधा नमक मंगवाते हैं और सेंधा नमक देते हैं लोगों को। सेंधा नमक इसलिए कि हमने जो 200-300 परिवारों को देना प्रारंभ किया, सभी के परिवारों में बीपी और थायराइड की समस्याएं खत्म हो गई। आयोडाइज सॉल्ट को क्यों हमारे देश के ऊपर थोपा गया, ये अभ्यास का एक विषय है जिसके ऊपर आप सब अभ्यास करें, ये मेरा निवेदन है। तो नमक चूंकि ये जीवन की आवश्यकता है, तो उसमें व्यापार नहीं हो सकता। तो इसीलिए जिस दाम में मिलता है उसी दाम में सबको देते हैं। अभी तो 45 रुपये किलो मिलता है, तो उसी दाम में देते हैं। बाजार में 70, 80, 90, 100 से कम में मिलता नहीं है। तो ये कोशिश है कि जीवन के लिए जो आवश्यक है उसका व्यापार ना हो, उसका केवल विनिमय हो। बाकी हमारे यहाँ लेन देन की, आदान प्रदान की कई सारी विधियाँ हैं, कई सारी पद्धतियाँ हैं। तो अ, आशीष गुप्ता जी एक तरह से हमारे गुरु भाई, बड़े भाई के स्वरूप में ही है, और हम दोनों के चिंतन में बहुत सारी समानताएं हैं। और इसीलिए मैंने उनको शायद जिस विषयों के ऊपर बात करनी है उन विषयों को छुआ नहीं है, ताकि रिपीटेशन ना हो। सबका बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद, और ये कार्यक्रम के लिए आप सबका स्वागत है, जब भी आप आना चाहो। धन्यवाद।
धन्यवाद सर। हमारे अगले वक्ता डॉक्टर सतीश देओधर जी। Dr. Deodhar has worked on imperfectly competitive market structures, World Trade Organization, agriculture trade, food quality and safety, and CSR issues. Besides, he has conducted research projects for India's Ministry of Food Processing Industry, Ministry of Agriculture, Indian Bank, and Economic Research Service of the US Department of Agriculture. He has also published research papers in national and international journals and has authored quite a few monographs. The publisher, Penguin Random House, has brought out 3 books authored by Dr. Deodhar. One of the books, Day to Day Economics, has gone on to become a national bestseller in the non-fiction category. With these words, I invite him.
Okay, thanks for that kind introduction. Um, don't start that stopwatch before I make an introduction. So I'm extremely sorry to come late and barge into sessions, but reminds me of this is out of the 15 minutes, right? So I reminded me of Leelavati and Bhaskaracharya. So Bhaskaracharya wanted Leelavati to get married, and being a mathematician, he came up with all the formulas of the celestial beings and how, and particular appropriate time, he had decided for her to get married. And the Gatika Patra was kept there. There was water in it, and there was a smaller pot which was floating inside. There was a hole in the bottom. And when the smaller pot gets filled with water, that's the time where she's supposed to get married. And she was all excited. So every 5 minutes she would come and see whether the pot is sinking or not. And it so happened hours went by. And then they figured out something must be wrong. So she was so anxious that one of the rice pearls had fallen into the hole in the middle. And therefore the water got stuck. Water was not filling. Something similar happened. I think the student who was supposed to pick me up, since last night he must be wondering, Professor Deodhar ko pick up karna hai, Deodhar ko pick up karna hai. And in the morning he forgot. So that's why I'm late. Now we can start 15 minutes. Okay, so yeah, thanks for the opportunity given to me to speak on Economic Sutra. In our classes, we have 1 hour, 15-minute session. You have cut out the one hour. So in 15 minutes, now I have to speak. 12 minutes, yeah. So you want to start now? So yeah, so I think the Indus University, there must be an Indic way of doing things in economics, right? That's what the name must be suggesting. So we have looked at communism, which failed. Soviet Union collapsed. There the idea was from each according to his abilities to each according to his needs. But it did not work, because unless there are incentives for people to work, society doesn't work. We need incentives. You need some market mechanism. And of course, in communism, there is dictatorship. Therefore, there is no individual freedom. So that's also the whole thing collapsed. Look at the other extreme is pure capitalism. It talks about individualism and markets. But that has also gone too far. In the sense, everything can be now bought in the market. In the Indic way, probably things are a little different. Household assumes importance. In capitalism, what happens? Whatever you do in a household can be outsourced in the market. Today we have, at home what happens, we mingle together, we are at the dining table, we prepare in kitchen, we are together. So many things happen. Now in the capitalism, everything can be taken from the market. Why prepare meals? Zomato is there. Why sit at dining table? You can go to a restaurant. So everything can be sourced in the market. You want to take care of parents, put them in the old age home. If you want to take care of children, put them in boarding school. And whatever is left off, conjugal love, You can also buy in the market. So then then that means the society lives on family values. That family values, if you want to market it out, then nothing will be left. I am a great admirer of Elon Musk. He may take us to the Mars, but he already has had 3 wives and 6 children officially. So why is he taking us to Mars? Is the is the society stable? Why are we doing all this? Why are we going for the Mars? But look at Dr. Sivan of ISRO. If you see that person walking on the streets, you will not recognize that he heads a place like ISRO. So I think what I'm driving at is that there is a third way. Capitalism has gone the other way. So what is this third way, right? I think there is a saying that suptasya sinhasya mukhena न प्रविश्यति मृगः. If there is a third way, if you don't know it, you are not going to get any positive things out of it. So we have to acharanam. So we have to do some acharana only, then things will change. So what are those things? I think in piecemeal wise, we know few things here and there, but somebody has to now put it all together and put it into our curriculum. For example, if you look at life of an individual in a society, it comprises of 64 permutations and combinations. 4 by 4 by 4. What are these 64 4 by 4 by 4 combinations? In capitalism, utility maximization is the objective for individual. Profit maximization for firms. A single dimensional objective. In Indic way, probably we don't have unidimensional objective function. We have multi-dimensional objective function. What are those objectives? Dharma, Artha, Kama, and Moksha. 4 objectives in life, right? Whatever you do, there has to be righteous conduct. Then, of course, Artha and Kama is also important. And finally, if you do the first 3 in proper weights, it's a linear combination of these 3, you will get Moksha also. So these are 4 objectives of life. While these 4 objectives of life are to be achieved, we never swim in the same river twice. I was a bachelor. In Indian system, you never know when you get married. You spend some 30, 40 years in married life, then you retire. You live off your savings. And then there is finally sannyas ashram. So finally, really, I also start wondering if time will come when my limbs will give away. A time comes when whatever your savings you cannot enjoy. You cannot enjoy your grandparents, grandchildren. That's the sannyas ashram for you, right? So there are 4 stages of life. So you never swim in the same river twice. You have 4 objectives in life, but then you are changing over time. And therefore, importance of each of these objectives also keeps changing. Now, in 1950s, Franco Modigliani called this life cycle hypothesis. So we have known this much earlier. So there are 2 things to Indic way of life. Some things which capitalism or communism is teaching us, some of the important things we already knew, and some other new ones which could be incorporated into our lives. So there are 2 parts to it, right? So Franco Modigliani's life cycle hypothesis is ashrama system. We already know about it. So while there are 4 objectives in life, there are 4 stages in life. How do you achieve these objectives while you are changing in your? By the way, these ashramas need not be biological. For many of us, they are simply biological. We get old. But then there are others who will choose different ashramas. For example, Adi Shankara chose to remain a bachelor. So that's out of own volition, right? There are others who will choose, Vijay Mallya will choose Artha and Kama all the time. So we are choosing our lifestyles, right? While doing this, of course, there has to be a profession to back this up. So there are 4 professions: Brahman, Kshatriya, Vaishya, and Shudra. 4 occupations are there, we have classified. Now it's a complete misnomer that it is birth based. Now you take any of our treatises, there is never ever a mention of birth based varnas. Take Gita. Gita says, Krishna says, Chatur Varnam Maya Sushtam Guna Karma Vibhagashaha. Depending on your actions and deeds, you will get to know where you fall. In fact, Dr. Ambedkar had said that the Upanayanam ceremony actually was done at the end of 12 years in Guru's ashram. In those 12 years, Guru would know who is good at doing what. And therefore, Upanayanam was commencement ceremony. Now you commence your profession. Your Varna was decided at the end of the 12 years. In India, we don't have, in US, they have commencement ceremony for graduation. In India, we have convocation. Bahut ho gaya. Enough of studies, right? So that's the commencement. So there is a discussion between Bhrigu and Bharadwaj Rishi in Mahabharata. One says, look, I sweat, I have blood, I have fecal matter, I have feces. Everything is common to everyone, then how can we be different? That is at the physical level. Then the other one says, even at the mental level, we are all same. We have Shadripus. All of us have Shadripus. Therefore, how can we be different? And then the bottom line is, it all depends on your guna karma. Right? Same thing was said by Adam Smith, but 2 millennia later. Adam Smith said the difference between a porter and a philosopher is not the cause of division of labor, but a consequence of the division of labor based on your upbringing, education. So that is what is, so that's the, so we have four varnas. So 4 times 4 times 4, there are 64 combinations, and one can choose where one wants to be. I think this idea has to be conveyed to our students that life is much more multifaceted. Once we do this, I'm sure, just like we talk about different economists of modern times, we need to make mention of 4 economists from Indian context. Narad Muni. Most of us read from Amar Chitrakatha and or even in Hindi films, and he's shown as a comical character. But he's a Pandit. When for the first time Yudhishthira is anointed as king, he walks into his court and he says, I hope you are taking care of the lame and the old and the weaker sections of the society. I hope you are building ponds and lakes at equal distance in different parts of your country. I hope you are taking care of internal security and external security. It goes on and on. Now, such a mature discussion between Yudhishthira and Narad Muni happens. And he's not the only one. In fact, Bhishma, Sharapanjari Bhishma, while on the bed of arrows, again, Yudhishthira was a really confused person, I think. Everybody would give him advice, right? So even Bhishma gives him advice and he says, look, how will you charge your taxes? Sharapanjari Bhishma is talking about how to charge taxes. And he says, and just look at this simile. It is so mature compared to the Western world. He says, tax individuals and firms just as a honeybee collects honey from the flower. When you collect honey, honeybee collects honey from the flower, it doesn't affect the bloom of the flower. Don't exploit the household and the firms. Let them continue to produce more. That incentive must remain there. And whatever honey is collected, in the process, pollination happens. That means whatever tax you collect has to be used for future public goods. What a mature example Bhishma is giving. And look at the French economist Colbert's definition of taxation. He says it's efficiently plucking the feathers from the goose without making hissing. That's exploitative in nature. Our examples are much more wider. So that's Bhishma and Narad Muni for you. There are 2 more. I think many of us by now we know Kautilya. So there's a treatise by Arthashastra by Kautilya. But I don't want to spend too much time on it. Just give you one example and then I'll give another one. We have today what is called as the pay commission. Many of us who are in the government sector look forward to a pay commission. Every 7-8 years, pay commission comes in, our salaries are adjusted. And when they get adjusted, we feel happy, but we still chuckle. I could have got more. Kautilya had talked about pay commission. He's talking about what should be the salary of a palanquin bearer. The most unskilled labor is palanquin bearer. He doesn't have to do anything, just carry forward. From palanquin bearer to the Rajaguru, or who is the advisor to the prime minister, to the king, he talks about from 60 panas to 48,000 panas is the wider variation in salaries that he is talking about. Similarly, in India, what happens in pay commission, you don't want to give too much variation in salaries because of quote unquote socialistic economy. In the process, what you do is you create seeds for corruption. If you don't recognize that the joint secretary, Dr. Mr. Jaishankar, he used to be, I think, secretary, foreign secretary earlier. If you don't pay him too much, there's always an incentive for him to do corrupt practices. I'm giving, no, not him personally, I'm saying, but a person, right? So therefore, wide variation in salaries is required to match the productivity of the each individual. Why he or she landed him in that particular position is a different story. That may be because of his aptitude, because of education, or very many other things. But the moment you have to recognize that there has to be wide variation in salary, otherwise it will set corruption in. That's just one of the examples I am giving from Kautilya's Arthashastra. Fourth person I mentioned, we all must know, is Shukracharya. Now, Shukracharya's original treatise is lost, but what we have found in 1800s, around that time, is Shukra Niti Sara. It's an abridged version of what the original Shukracharya must have written. I'll just give you one example, and then I think I should stop. I have 15 minutes here. You know, farmers see loans, and repayment of loan becomes a big issue in India, right? It is always a fact that when you give loan to a farmer, there'll be a contractual arrangement to repay the loan. But have we taken care of the fact that there could be a drought? Have we taken care of the fact that there'll be excessive rains? Who is supposed to take care of this? But you expect the farmer to return the loan. Now, Shukracharya clearly says, he has come up with definitions. He says, if you take a loan and if the interest that you have paid is reached twice the original borrowed amount, then you need not pay any more interest. Just return the loan itself. Let's say things still don't improve. You keep paying interest. If the interest becomes 4 times as much as the principal, then you need not even return the principal because you have already paid 4 times the principal. That means 100% part of it is the principal and 300% you have paid as interest. No more. And what else? Farm loan waivers, what else is it? Instead of making haphazard random decisions of farm loan waivers, if we can put in such a system in place, that would be much beneficial both for farmers and the lenders as well, right? I think there could be many more examples like this. So I thought 4 economies of Indian context, our people must know their examples. We must know what they were talking about. We must know, and a holistic approach of 4 varnas, 4 ashramas, and 4 life objectives. I think we need to understand this. I'll just give one last example and then I'll stop. Of the 4 objectives of life, one is dharma, right? Now, dharma can be interpreted in very many ways. One of them is ahimsa and sustainability. Now, ahimsa means what? Ahimsa doesn't mean no himsa. You know, anudara is a word for a woman, means someone who has a very small waist. Doesn't mean she has no waist, right? Similarly, ahimsa doesn't mean there is no himsa. You decide what is your level of minimal himsa. Freedom is given to us. But therefore, even Manusmriti says that if you want to eat meat, please go ahead. If you want to eat drink, please go ahead. If you want to have carnal pleasures all the time, please do. However, abstention brings great reward. Now, the leftists will only quote the first 3 shlokas, not the fourth part of it. That is most important. Freedom is given to us. But what is the reason behind this dharmic behavior is abstinence brings great rewards. Why? There is some association with environment. If you remain, I think these points were brought out yesterday also. If you remain vegetarian, you are making sure there is sustainable production in the society. Otherwise, you are producing fodder. That's why you are deforesting. And then you let the animal eat more. Then you eat the animal. This is indirect way of doing things. This is not sustainable. You are wasting nature's resources. Yesterday again somebody said 1 kg of protein coming from meat sources takes 5,000, at least 5,000 liters of water. But 1 kg of protein coming from dal only takes 1,000 liters of water. That means we are saving on resources. I think these ideas have to be brought forward. One can go on and on like this. I think I've just given a glimpse of it. Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity.
Thank you, sir. So our next speaker is Shri Ashish Kumar Gupta जी. मूलतः जबलपुर के रहने वाले श्री आशीष जी ग्रामीण प्रबंधन संस्थान से ग्रामीण प्रबंधन विषय के स्नातकोत्तर हैं. करियर की शुरुआती 12-14 वर्षों में ग्राम विकास, लघु वित्त, सामाजिक उद्यमिता, कारीगरी आदि के क्षेत्र में सक्रिय रहे. सौभाग्य से जीवन के शुरुआती समय में ही भारतीय व्यवस्थाओं के एक अनूठे ध्येयता आदिलाबाद के गुरुजी स्वर्गीय श्री रविंद्र शर्मा जी के संपर्क में आ गए थे. उनके साथ एक लंबा समय गुजारते गुजारते कब जीवन की दिशा बदल गई उन्हें पता भी नहीं चला. पिछले 6-8 वर्षों से जबलपुर शहर के नज़दीक मझौली तहसील के इंद्राणा गांव में जीविका आश्रम नाम से अपना एक केंद्र बनाकर वहीं के ग्रामीण परिवेश में परिवार सहित रहते हैं. भारतीय दृष्टि से चिरस्थायी जीवन शैली को साधते हैं एवं सार्थक करने का प्रयास करते हैं और यह देश भर में सक्रिय है. उनकी इस दूसरी पारी में भी लोगों को उनके काम की गुरुता समझ में आने लगी है. यही कारण है कि 6-8 वर्षों के अल्पविधि में ही जीविका आश्रम पूरे देश भर से लोगों को अपनी ओर आकर्षित करने लगा है और उनके काम को देश भर में विभिन्न मंचों पर सराहा जाने लगा है. इसी के साथ सर आपसे आग्रह है कि आप अपने उद्बोधन से हमें अनुग्रहित करें.
थैंक यू रितु, इतना लंबा चौड़ा इंट्रोडक्शन करने के लिए. तो जैसा बताया आपको कि ये जीविका आश्रम है हमारा. जीविका आश्रम में हम लोग कुछ कुछ कोशिश कर रहे हैं बहुत सारी चीज़ों पे, भारतीय जीवन शैली के ऊपर में किस तरह से काम किया जा सकता है, क्या उसके प्रश्न हैं, क्या उसके चीज़ें हैं. तो मैं जैसे बता रहा था कि कुछ ऑब्जर्वेशंस इस पूरे इकोनॉमिक सूत्रास को लेके, जीवन शैली को लेके चल रहे हैं. वहाँ रहते हुए, गांव में रहते हुए देख रहे हैं जीवन शैली को, वहाँ देख रहे हैं, ऑब्जर्व कर रहे हैं. फिर जैसा बताया गया कि श्री रविंद्र शर्मा जी के साथ काफ़ी समय, लंबा समय बिताने का सौभाग्य प्राप्त हुआ. उसके साथ में रहते हुए कुछ चीज़ें आ रही हैं. तो मैं यहाँ पे बाकी चीज़ें ना करते हुए, मुझे मेरे जो कुछ ऑब्जर्वेशंस हैं और जो प्रश्न मेरे सामने खड़े हो रहे हैं, मुझे लगा मेरे ख्याल से वो साझा करता हूँ और उससे कुछ चीज़ निकल के आएगी. आज जैसा अभी कनक सभापति जी has mentioned and then Ashutosh has also mentioned that our till 17th 18th century also the contribution in the world, not GDP but the trade, was up to 33%. So there are various estimates from 25% to 33%, which is basically quite something. But the question is, can we name a few industrialists, few businessmen of that era? 18वीं शताब्दी से पहले जहां हम जब इस सब की बात कर रहे, जब हमारा 25% 30% योगदान था विश्व व्यापार में, तो उस समय भी कुछ उद्योगपति तो होंगे ना. हम टाटा बिरला के पहले कुछ लोगों को नाम जानते हैं, बता सकते हैं? एनीबडी? कोई नहीं जानता है. टाटा आज आज हमारा विश्व उसमें योगदान कितना है? लगभग 1 से 1.5% के आसपास, 1.5% 1.25% के आसपास है इन द एंटायर ट्रेड, वर्ल्ड जीडीपी, व्हाटएवर वी कॉल इट. लेकिन हमारे पास इतने सारे लोग, टाटा हैं, बिरलाज हैं, अंबानीज हैं, अदानीज हैं, देयर सो मेनी ऑफ देम. तो या तो ये वो जो बात बोल रहे हैं वो गलत है कि 25% तो होगा नहीं, जब हम लोग ही नहीं जानते, नाम ही नहीं जानते. हमारे राजा महाराजाओं की इतनी लंबी लिस्ट है, इतनी सारी चीज़ों की जानकारी है, फ्रीडम फाइटर्स कितने सारे हैं, उसके पहले कि हम किसी को क्यों नहीं जानते हैं. तो या तो वो चीज़ है कि 25% की जो थ्योरी है वो गलत है, या फिर हमारे मैकेनिज्म अलग थे. हमारे मैकेनिज्म ऐसे थे कि किसी को अडानी, अंबानी, टाटा, बिरला बनने नहीं दिया गया था. उसके बावजूद भी वर्ल्ड ट्रेड में हमारा 25% 30% का योगदान था. तो वो क्या मैकेनिज्म थे, क्या सिस्टम थे, क्या तरीके थे, क्या इकोनॉमिक डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन का मैकेनिज्म थे कि सोने की चिड़िया तो बना लेकिन कोई इतना बड़ा नहीं बना. इतना हर घरों में दूध दही की नदियां बहती थी, लेकिन वो दूध दही की नदियां क्यों बहती थी? किसी लोगों के पास सेंट्रलाइज होकर क्यों नहीं हुई? आज छोटा सा कुछ होता है तो न्यू स्टार्टअप के नाम पे, इसके नाम पे 2 4 5 10 करोड़ 50 करोड़ की कंपनी छोटे छोटे समय में बन जाती है, 1 2 साल में बन जाती है. तो व्हाट वेर दोज इकोनॉमिक सूत्रास ऑफ दैट टाइम? सेकेंडली, दूसरा एक ऑब्जर्वेशन है कि यदि हम आज देखते हैं, आज से 10 20 साल 15 25 साल पहले, 30 साल पहले तक की भी, मतलब मैं जिस इलाके में रहता हूँ जब एमपी में, वहाँ भी बहुत बड़ा आदिवासी इलाका है ना. तो आदिवासी इलाकों की आप किसी की भी आप गूगल करके देख लें, फोटो उठा के, मतलब फोटो देखने की कोशिश करें, हर आदिवासी महिला के शरीर पे 5-7 किलो की चांदी मिलेगी, है ना. देख, ऑब्जर्व किया ना. आज भी ट्राइबल ज्वेलरी के नाम से बहुत सी ऑक्सीडाइज ज्वेलरी ये सब करके उसके नाम पे बिकती है. हर महिला के शरीर पे 5-7 किलो की चांदी. गले में होगा तो इतना बड़ा होगा, बाजूबंद होंगे, हाथ पे होंगे, पैरों में पहनने की चीज होगी, कमर का पट्टा जो होता था वही 1 किलो के आसपास का होता था, 1 1.5 किलो के आसपास का. तो कैन वी कैन वी जस्ट क्वेश्चन, मतलब आई डोंट नो, ऑब्जर्वेशन एक आता है कि इतनी चांदी उनके पास आई कहाँ से होगी। आज हम उनको बोल रहे हैं कि इतने मार्जिनलाइज्ड हैं, कहाँ रह रहे हैं, ये रह रहे हैं। उस जमाने में तो और मार्जिनलाइज थे, उस सेंस में देखा जाए तो होना चाहिए। तो उनके पास इतनी चांदी आई कहाँ से। और ये चांदी तब की स्थिति है कि जब भारत में चांदी की कोई खदान नहीं है। सोने की खदान हमको कोलार उलार के पास मिलती है, रत्नों की बहुत सारी चीजें मिलती हैं जहां पुराने से चलता रहा। चांदी की खदान के बारे में जियोलॉजी वाले भी और बाकी सब जो लोग बताएं कोई है तो चांदी जब कोई मिलती नहीं थी तो उतने के पास कहाँ से आई। और ना केवल आई बल्कि उतनी दूर तक पहुंची। दूसरी चीज कि हमारे भारत में अनाज बेचना पाप रहा है। तो जब अनाज बेचना पाप रहा है तो हम एग्रीकल्चर का भी हमने एक्सपोर्ट नहीं किया कि उसको बेच के हमारे पास आई होगी। दूसरे देशों को जाके लूटने की भी बहुत ज्यादा खबर हमारे देश की नहीं है भारत में कि हम उनके यहाँ से बहुत सारा लूट के लेके आए। हमारी हिस्ट्री में तो नहीं है। जिस जगह पे हम लोग गए हैं वहां की हिस्ट्री में भी नहीं मिलता है कि नहीं नहीं यहाँ इंडियंस आए थे बहुत लूट के लेके चले गए। तो इतनी चांदी आई कहां से उनके पास में। स्वाभाविक है व्यापार से, ट्रेड से, जो हम बात कर रहे हैं जो 25% 30% की। लेकिन वो आई, लेकिन उसका डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन का मैकेनिज्म क्या था, वेल्थ डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन का मैकेनिज्म क्या था कि उतने सुदूर इलाकों में भी चांदी पहुंची। दूसरा क्वेश्चन। तीसरा क्वेश्चन है कि आज हम देखते हैं एग्रीकल्चर के फील्ड में इतने सारे प्रयोग हो रहे हैं। ऑर्गेनिक फार्मिंग है, जैविक खेती है, प्राकृतिक खेती है, ऋषि खेती है, आवर्तनशील खेती है, सस्टेनेबल खेती है, अलग अलग नाम से, जीरो बजट फार्मिंग है। इतना सारा कुछ हो रहा है। सारे के सारे क्या है, यदि ब्रॉड दृष्टि से देखा तो भारतीय कृषि की पद्धतियां हैं, उसी के सब कंपोनेंट्स अलग अलग स्पेशलाइज बना के रखा हुआ है। लेकिन ये जो पूरा एग्रीकल्चर है, एग्रीकल्चर में हम जितना सारा प्रोड्यूस हो रहा है इसको हम क्या कर रहे हैं, ऑर्गेनिक खेती के नाम पे, ऋषि खेती के नाम पे, जीरो, इट इज बीइंग सोल्ड एट प्रीमियम। जिस पद्धति में, जिस भारतीय पद्धति में अनाज बेचना पाप माना जाता है वहां हम उसको प्रीमियम पे बेच रहे हैं। क्या उसको हम भारतीय बोल सकते हैं या बोलना चाहिए। आज जिसमें पूरा ही ये पद्धति वही है। यदि इंडिक की हम बात कर रहे हैं, वर्डोलॉजी की बात कर रहे हैं, तो ये भारतीय उस किस दृष्टि से कहलाएगा। जहां पे अनाज बेचना पाप माना जाता रहा हो, वो उस पूरी कॉन्सेप्ट में एग्रीकल्चर वेयर डज इट फिट इन। सेकेंडली, एग्री हेल्थ के बारे में आशुतोष ने जिक्र किया कि हमारे पास में हर तरह की जातियां हैं। आज हमारे भारत में जब जातियां रही हैं, कास्ट सिस्टम में, कास्ट तो गलत शब्द है, जाति ही जो है, जो क्योंकि ज्ञाति रहती थी, वो स्पेशलाइजेशन थी। हर ट्रेड है, लोहार है, सुनार है, कुम्हार है, बढ़ई है, बंशकार है, जुलाहे हैं, बुनकर हैं, जितने सारे काम हैं उतनी जातियां हैं। क्योंकि हर जाति एक काम को ही डिनोट करती थी, स्पेशलाइजेशन को ही डिनोट करती। उसकी भी सब कास्ट है। जैसे लोहे का काम करने वाले, लोहे में भी बहुत तरह के लोहे के, उनकी सबकी 12-12 15-15 सब कास्ट हैं। लोहे में भी जो काम है, एग्रीकल्चर इक्विपमेंट्स बनाने वाले अलग हैं, डोमेस्टिक जो यूटेंसिल्स बनाने वाले लोग अलग हुआ करते थे, धार वाले रोजगार हथियार बनाने वाले लोग अलग होते थे, चाकू छुरी कैंची ये सब बनाने वाले लोग, ताले जैसे चीजें बनाने वाले अलग हुआ करते थे। फिर जो पेटियां जैसे होती थी, जो टीन की पेटियां बनती हैं, वो बड़ी बड़ी पेटियों जैसे संदूक जो हुआ करते वो बनाने वाले, तो ये सब उनकी सबकी अलग अलग स्पेसिफिक कास्ट है। बट क्या हमने कभी वैद्यों की कोई जाति सुना है। लोहार, सुनार, कुम्हार, बढ़ई, इतने सारे लोग हैं, लेकिन क्या हमने वैद्यों की कोई जाति सुनी है। क्यों नहीं सुनी। क्योंकि वैद्यगिरी कभी किसी का धंधा नहीं रहा है, किसी का पेशा नहीं रहा है, कभी रोजगार नहीं रहा। हर जाति के लोग वैद्य हो सकते थे। कुम्हार भी वैद्य हो सकता था, सुनार भी वैद्य हो सकता था, लोहार भी वैद्य हो सकता था। जिसको उस चीज की पकड़ है वो उसका वैद्य होता था। लेकिन आज भारतीय चिकित्सा पद्धति के नाम पे जो प्रयोग हो रहे हैं उसमें क्या स्थिति है कि आज ये सारी चीजें प्रीमियम की चीजें हो गई। आयुर्वेद, ये इतने सारी चीजें नए नए खुल रहे हैं, तो क्या हम उनको वाकई भारतीय बोल सकते हैं, बोलना चाहिए। दिस इज अनदर क्वेश्चन। सेम थिंग इन एजुकेशन फील्ड में, शिक्षा के क्षेत्र में, जैसे अभी आशुतोष बता रहे थे कि विद्या हमेशा से दान की वस्तु रही है। आज गुरुकुलों के नाम पे इतने सारे प्रयोग हो रहे हैं। ये सारे प्रयोग भी सब जगह पे शिक्षकों को रखना, सब जगह पे शिक्षकों को मानदेय पे देना या बाकी सारे, तो ये गुरु उस सेंस में गुरु फिर नहीं कहा जा सकता ना। तो ये जो चीज है, हम व्हाट आई एम ड्राइंग अटेंशन, योर अटेंशन टू इज कि हम भारतीय पद्धति में इकोनॉमिक्स का कितना बड़ा इंपॉर्टेंस रहा है, ये आज हम उस चीज को भूल रहे हैं। रविंद्र शर्मा जी की जिक्र आया था कई बार। वो बोलते थे कि हमारी पूरी समाज व्यवस्था 4 प्रमुख स्तंभों पर आधारित है। पहला तो विज्ञान है, साइंस, ये सारा कुछ जो कुछ है। दूसरा कला, तीसरा अध्यात्म, और चौथा सामाजिक अर्थशास्त्र। अर्थशास्त्र जो होना है हमारा, वो सामाजिक अर्थशास्त्र होना, असामाजिक अर्थशास्त्र नहीं। आज हमारे जितने सारे प्रयोग हैं, जिस सारी फील्ड में हम बात कर रहे हैं, साइंस में इतने सारे प्रयोग हो रहे हैं, या साइंस बोल रहा हूँ, जितने एजुकेशन में, हेल्थ में, आर्किटेक्चर में, वर्नाकुलर आर्किटेक्चर बहुत सारा आ रहा है, जितने सारे प्रयोग हो रहे हैं, वी आर रिस्ट्रिक्टिंग आवरसेल्व्स टू ओनली द साइंस एस्पेक्ट ऑफ इट, टेक्नोलॉजी टेक्निकल एस्पेक्ट ऑफ इट। खेती में जीवामृत कितना डालना है, उसके बदले ये कितना डालना है, उसमें गुड़ कितना होना चाहिए, उसमें उसकी फसल कितनी होनी चाहिए, नक्षत्रों के हिसाब से कैसी सोइंग होनी चाहिए, ये सब, दिस इज ऑल कंप्लीटली साइंस ऑफ इट। सिमिलरली हेल्थ के में भी बात कर रहे हैं तो ये सारा कुछ उसका साइंस पे ही है, कि आयुर्वेद की पद्धति हो या उसकी पद्धति हो, पंचकर्म क्या होगा, पंचगव्य के हिसाब से क्या है, दिस इज साइंस ऑफ इट। दिस इज जस्ट वन पार्ट ऑफ द एंटायर थिंग। द मोस्ट इंपॉर्टेंट पार्ट, जिसके कारण हम सोने की चिड़िया बने, जिसके कारण दूध दही की नदियां बहती थी, वॉज द इकोनॉमिक एस्पेक्ट ऑफ इट। हमारा अर्थशास्त्र, सामाजिक अर्थशास्त्र किस तरह का था, क्या पद्धतियां थी जहां ये सारी चीजें हुआ करती थी। आज नहीं तो क्या है, देखिए मैं आप इस सब चीज के माध्यम से, मतलब देयर इज लॉट विच वी कैन डिस्कस, उसके एस्पेक्ट्स क्या क्या हैं सामाजिक, बट आई थिंक मोर इंपॉर्टेंट इज टू रियलाइज द इंपॉर्टेंस ऑफ दिस। आज ये सारी चीज नहीं होंगे तो कुछ ही दिनों में हम इतने सारे बिजनेस, आज जो कॉर्पोरेट्स हैं या बड़े जो बिजनेस हाउसेस हैं, ये किस चीज़ का इंतजार कर रहे हैं, हम सारे जितने सारे जो प्रयोग कर रहे हैं एग्रीकल्चर के क्षेत्र में, स्वास्थ्य के क्षेत्र में, शिक्षा के क्षेत्र में, आर्किटेक्चर के क्षेत्र में, यू नेम इट, एंड देयर आर एक्सपेरिमेंटेशन विच इज गोइंग ऑन, दीज आर ऑल वेटिंग फॉर द बिजनेस मॉडल टू बी डेवलप्ड। आपका बिजनेस मॉडल डेवलप होते ही ये सारा चीज कॉर्पोरेट में चला जाने वाला है। वन इज बिजनेस मॉडल, सेकंड इज द टारगेट कस्टमर्स। आपके कस्टमर बेस तैयार हो, जैसे एक मिनिमम कस्टमर बेस होगा, दिस, ये हम सारी चीजों में देख रहे हैं। माइक्रो फाइनेंस एक बहुत, मैं मतलब मेरा एक परिचय आप लोगों में दिया ऋतु ने, कि माइक्रो फाइनेंस के क्षेत्र में मैंने काम किया, सोशल एंटरप्रेन्योरशिप के क्षेत्र में काम किया। ये सारी चीजें में एक बिजनेस मॉडल बनने तक का लोगों ने इंतजार किया है। जैसे ये बिजनेस मॉडल बना, इट इज नाउ माइक्रो फाइनेंस इज नॉट अ सोशल सब्जेक्ट एनीमोर, इट इज कंप्लीटली मूव टू अ इकोनॉमिक सब्जेक्ट। अब सारे की जो सारे कॉर्पोरेट्स में है, बैंक्स इन्वॉल्व हैं, सारा कुछ चीज है। हेल्थ के क्षेत्र में ये हो रहा है, किस जगह पे आज कोलगेट आपको वेद शक्ति और पता नहीं किस किस नाम से वो चीज लेके आ रहा है, जो आपकी चीज, तो ये आपने एक कस्टमर बेस बनाया है, एक बिजनेस मॉडल बनाया, एंड देयर आर पीपल हु आर रेडी टू ग्रैब द एंटायर थिंग। चॉइस इज योर्स, वेयर डू वी वांट टू गो to develop the models which will ultimately be adopted by the corporates, और हम अपनी जिस तरह से बात कर रहे हैं, कि जैसे भारतीय कृषि की बात हो रही है, भारतीय चिकित्सा पद्धतियों की बात हो रही है, भारतीय आर्किटेक्चर की बात हो रही है, क्या हम भारतीय व्यापार पद्धति की भी बात कर सकते हैं? क्या वो पद्धतियां थी जहां पर ये सारा चीज बड़े आसानी से चलता था, और ना केवल चलता था बल्कि इतनी तरह से डिस्ट्रीब्यूट होता था। एक एग्जांपल आशुतोष ने दिया कि जो मटके वाला जो था, आज भी हमारे इंद्राना गांव में लगभग लगभग सारे काम जो होते थे, आप खलियान में, खेत में जब वो कट के आता था अनाज, हार्वेस्टिंग होने के बाद उसकी गहाई होती, खलियान होता था जहां सारी चीज गहाई होती थी, उस खलियान में ही सारे लोगों के हिस्से बांट होते थे। कुम्हार का हिस्सा लग जाएगा, लोहार का हिस्सा लग जाएगा, सुनार का, जो खेती में काम करने वाले लोग हैं उनका हिस्सा जाएगा, साल भर का हिस्सा वहां पे लोग आके वेट करते थे और लेके चले जाते थे, सबका हिस्सा निकला होता था। उधर से जब तक का हिस्सा बंटवारा नहीं होता था, उसके पहले खलियान से घर में आता नहीं था अनाज। इसकी बकायदा पद्धतियां रही हैं। इसके मतलब फाइनल एस्पेक्ट्स में जाएंगे तो बहुत सारी चीजें हैं। आई थिंक वी कैन टेक अप इन द क्वेश्चन आंसर सेंसर इफ इट इज नीडेड। आई विल क्लोज इट हियर, टाइम भी हो गया है। थैंक यू।
Thank you so much, sir. Now we move on to the next phase of the third session, which is the open discussion round, whereby all the experts on and off the dais will engage in a discussion um, on economic sutras and sustainable lifestyles. So I request the volunteers to make the mic available to our experts.
Many thanks to all the speakers for such a wonderful session and giving us a glimpse of what the Indian economic situation or economic scene has been before. My question is, this system of exchange of wealth, which I should say, is called as a barter system. And that word barter system बहुत खराब लगता है, वो barbaric लगता है. Can any one of you tell your views on that?
मैं इसमें मतलब बाकी और लोग भी करना चाहेंगे तो करेंगे, मैं बताता हूँ। देखिए ये बार्टर सिस्टम जो है ये हमारा सिस्टम नहीं है, ये बहुत ही गलत प्रत्यारोपित जिसको बोला जा गया है ना, उस तरह का है। बार्टर तो बहुत मजबूरी में चलने वाला सिस्टम है। जब जैसे ये बता रहे थे मटके का उदाहरण, मैं और भी उदाहरण दुनिया भर के दे सकता हूँ, लेकिन चूंकि इसी ने ऑलरेडी गिवन, मटके के उदाहरण में वो अपनी मर्जी से इतना सारा जो दे रहे हैं वो हो रहा है। यहाँ पे कोई ऐसा वो नहीं है कि आप सोना के बदले में, नमक के बदले में आप कुछ, आदिवासियों की मैं जो बात कर रहे हैं जिनके पास इतनी चांदी है, जो एक छोटा सा एविडेंस हम सीधे मतलब हम देखते हैं लेकिन हमको दिखता नहीं है। तो ये बार्टर जैसे सिस्टम है, ये बहुत मजबूरी में चलने वाले सिस्टम है, ये हमारे समाज की शब्द है ही नहीं। और ये जब जिस समाज पूरा समृद्ध हो, जहाँ इतना इतना वेल्थ इतना जबरदस्त हो, तो वो उस जगह पे तो ये एप्लीकेबल हो ही नहीं सकता। हमारे यहाँ पे क्या था, हमारे यहाँ जजमानी सिस्टम था। जजमानी एक अलग चीज है कि आप कोई यज्ञ कर रहे हैं और आप यज्ञ में इतने सारे लोग जजमान हैं। आप एक यज्ञ करने वाला होता है, जजमान जो कराने वाला होता है, मतलब जो जिसके बिहाफ में होता है। तो ये जजमान, इस पूरे व्यवस्था को एक जजमान सिस्टम जैसे यज्ञ जैसे माना जाता था कि इसमें इतने सारे लोगों का भला होगा। तो ये बार्टर सिस्टम, वी शुड कम आउट ऑफ दिस। ये हमारे यहाँ यदि देखना ही है उस चीज को, उस सबसे सबने, तो जजमानी के नाम से कुछ कुछ थोड़ा बहुत मिल जाएगा आप लोगों को नेट पे, तो वो देख सकते हैं।
Yeah, I agree fully. Barter system is not convenient at all. The fact, I mean, many of you who teach economics and studying economics would know there's lack of double coincidence of wants. Whatever I want, somebody has to offer that as well, and in the same quantity. Otherwise, how would you do it, right? So therefore, he is absolutely right. And you going back in our ancient literature also, there was a concept of monetary economy. In fact, you will not believe this, but there was this deficit financing also, printing of money. When, how do you think Kautilya financed war to fight against the Magadha Empire? He went to Takshashila, took a pastoral boy with him, he taught him at Takshashila, and they came back and then they attacked Patliputra. Where would he finance it? He converted baser metal, copper coins into silver coins by plating them, and that's creating money and finance war. So you will certainly need money for sure. That's given, and I fully agree what he said. Thank you.
One, the word hegemon, nowadays popularly it is used for the lord, and actual Sanskrit word, its meaning is one who performs yajna. So what I feel is in culture, even the so-called lord is seen as the performer of yajna. In that way only the word hegemon is perceived in this way. This is my feeling. Okay. And one more thing regarding barter system, you are telling that it is taken to be barbaric. That's what you are telling. Even regarding the word barbarism, barbaric, what I feel is these words like barbaric, savage, all these things are a misunderstanding regarding the forest way of life, tribal way of life, and we don't have equivalent words for barbarism or savage for all these things in any Indian language. This is what I feel.
Namaste, sir. It's a great informative informations from all of you. We all thanking on that. And I have doubt that how we can sustainably incorporate these ideas of economic sustainability of Indian ideas in the schools. Because there, if you reading these things, then the new generation can get the insight of this, of Indian, how it will be there. And how we can incorporate it in the schools, then that will be helpful for the future generations to come. Thank you.
No, you're absolutely right. This needs to be inculcated in schools or colleges. So we learn enough of economics. Everything is about Western economic. So there could be some textbooks, some papers from the Indian context, which should be incorporated. For example, I think I mentioned four economists, right? I think what they have said should be imparted to our students, so that otherwise you get an inferiority complex that everything is coming from the West. But many of the things have been already discussed in our own by our own people. So that could be certainly shared. And in fact, the title, I'm glad you put the title of this session as Economic Sutra. That's the title of my book. So if I'll be happy to share a copy if you want. And that's I wrote it with that background in my mind. So I think those can be certainly done. In fact, two things I will just mention if you don't mind. some of the things which we take for granted in the Western civilization, they are at their religious traditions are orthogonal to the capitalism. Interest is not supposed to be charged by the Western religious context. Interest is sin. That was not the case in the Indian context. I mean, you may in literature students might have heard of a pound of flesh and not a drop of blood from Shakespeare. It has a dark side to it that you cannot charge interest. That was not the case in the Indian context. Similarly, Professor Galbraith has said mass slavery was endorsed even by Aristotle. We have never ever had the slavery in place. But somehow Aristotle means we keep him on a very high pedestal. So I think some of these things should come out and as a factual thing, right? So that we understand ourselves better. So should be important. Yes. Thanks.
One more thing is like, one is in the schools. Other thing is even in the practice, there are hardly examples these days of the Indian way of sort of economic transactions which can take place. So for example, he said कि मूर्ति बनाते हैं और देते हैं. ये अब कहाँ बचे हैं जो नए एक्सपेरिमेंटेशंस जो हैं. So that's what I was just saying कि हमको ये थोड़ा सा we need to sort of think on this कि just like various experimentations are being held in the field of agriculture, health, this, that, what not, everything. Similarly, the business side of it, हाउ टू डू द बिजनेस, भारतीय तरीका क्या रहा है व्यापार करने का, उद्योगों को चलाने का, उस पर प्रयोग होना बहुत जरूरी है. अदरवाइज जैसे मैं बता रहा हूँ आपको कि ये सारे मॉडल भी एक लेवल पे जाके शरीर के रूप में तो भारतीय हैं, लेकिन आत्मा से पूरी तरह से अभारतीय होंगे. यदि हमको ऑर्गेनिक चीजें प्रीमियम में बेचना पड़ रही हैं और पड़ेंगी कंटिन्यूसली, दिस पर्टिकुलर थिंग ट्रेंड इज गोइंग ऑन ओनली. तो लोग अभी गौशालाओं में बढ़िया हो रही हैं, अच्छी बात है, बहुत बढ़िया है. आई एम नॉट डिनाइंग एनीथिंग ऑन दिस. मतलब इनफैक्ट यदि अभी तक ये प्रयोग नहीं हुए होते तो हम ये सारी चीज इतने क्रिटिकली इवेल्युएट भी नहीं कर पाते. तो व्हाट जितने प्रयोग इस लेवल तक आए हैं ये तो बहुत अच्छी बात है, बट वेयर टू गो फ्रॉम हेयर इज द थिंग. आज लोग 2,000 रुपए किलो, 3,000 रुपए किलो, 4,000 रुपए किलो घी अपने यहाँ को बेच रहे हैं और उसको दे फील प्राउड ऑफ इट. They should feel proud, that is this thing, but they should also realize that this is not the end of it. ये चीजें लगातार चलती रहे तो ये हम मतलब तो सेंट्रलाइजेशन का, ये सारा चीजों का, ये पूरी पद्धति उसी तरह की हो जाएगी. So that is what we need to understand कि we need to have experimentations on that front also. कि ये जो थ्योरी में है उसको प्रैक्टिकल में भी हम कहीं कहीं से लेके आए, उस पर प्रयोग चालू हो, आरंभ हो. जो इस चीज को समझ रखते हैं, एक लेवल तक पहुंच चुके हैं, तो उसके बाद स्कूलों में ले जाना और आसान होगा. जब कोई आदमी देखता है तो देख के पढ़ना समझना और आसान हो जाता है.
One point at the university level, university college levels, such books are getting introduced now. During the last 10 years, one or two of these kind of books are getting introduced. And as far as schools are concerned, there was a meeting about 6 months back. I also took part. The NCRT books, they are going to change the books uh, based on our India-centric practices that are happening. So about 6 months back, there was a meeting. I think developments are going on to include these aspects in the school level also. But at the college and university levels, we know that there are some universities, colleges that are using such kind of books.
My question is continuation. Excuse me. Namaste. My question is a continuation of what Dr. Ranganji said. The Yajamana, as he said, pointed out, it comes from Yajna. And is there a complete Yajna model of taking the entire economic process as a Yajna model of economics, which actually Ramswarup hinted at, gave an exposition in one of his lectures. And this also becomes in a way a conceptual basis for what Gandhi called as the trusteeship economics. And we have again an ancient model. For example, the kings of Travancore used to call them Padmanabha Dasa because they are just representatives of the deity. You both have worked in the villages, in the tribal villages. Can you suggest a similar kind of a yajna model of co-creation being in these tribal communities? Thank you.
Hello. I think if we see not only the tribal area, even the rural areas where we are working, not we working, but entire rural area, the entire functioning was supposed to be on this model only. So we have just like a lot of things that we have lost and we are reinventing the again, be it on the other field. Similarly, this particular thing has to be kept up. Say, for example, all the sanskaras that we do, or for that matter, any pujas for you go, if you go to the Purohit, what does he do? He give you a list of things. First and the foremost thing is he gives the list of the items to be sort of brought, arranged for this particular area. And what does it have? 1 मीटर लाल कपड़ा, 1 मीटर काला कपड़ा, 4 मिट्टी के घड़े, 1 तांबे का ये सारी चीजें होती हैं. You're getting it? So all these things were there. And what are these items supposed to be from? These are all supposed to be from the artisans of that village only. Just like you have your newspaper wala and your doodh walas these days in urban areas, in villages you have to have everything your, like कुम्हार आपका होगा, लोहार आपका होगा, सुनार आपका होगा, बढ़ाई होगा, आपको उन्हीं के यहाँ से जाके सामान लेना है. It was so tied up. So ये एक बड़े फ्रेमवर्क में they were also used to call कौटुंबिक. 18 तरह के जो कारीगर हुआ करते थे, ये आपके कौटुंबिक होते थे. आपको सारा सामान उनसे ही लेना है, आप बाहर से कुछ चीज नहीं लेके आ सकते. तो जितनी आपकी पॉटरी रिलेटेड जरूरतें हैं वो आपका कुम्हार पे, यू कैन नॉट सोर्स इट फ्रॉम एनीबडी एल्स अदर्स कुम्हार, यू हैव टू गेट इट फ्रॉम योर कुम्हार ओनली. सुनार होगा, अभी भी ये चीजें चलती हैं जो अर्बन एरियाज में भी जो लोग बाहर से आए हैं, मतलब जो वहाँ काफी समय से हो गए. धोबी आप नहीं बदलते हैं ना, जहाँ जो धोबी होगा न्यूज़पेपर वाला आप नहीं बदलते हैं. आपके गांव में आपके पड़ोस में दूसरा न्यूज़पेपर वाला देगा, आपके यहाँ दूसरा देगा, बट यू डोंट change, and they also don't encroach upon anybody else's market. So similarly was the thing. So this was sort of a jajmani system only. So if you perform any sanskara, in all those sanskaras, some of the items were supposed to be procured from all of these artisans. There was no such need as such. लाल कपड़ा नहीं बना के आप नहीं करेंगे तो नहीं. अभी कोरोना में इतने सारे लोगों का हमने दाह संस्कार किया, कोई वो होगा ऐसा कुछ नहीं है. तो ये एक इकोनॉमिक एस्पेक्ट भी उसका हुआ करता है कि यदि आप अग्नि संस्कार कर रहे हैं या मतलब अंतिम संस्कार जो कर रहे हैं, तो कुम्हार के यहाँ से आएगा, लोहार के यहाँ से आएगा, सुनार के यहाँ से आएगा, बढ़ई के यहाँ से आएगा, पंचरत्न देना है, किसी के यहाँ से मटका आएगा, किसी के यहाँ से अर्थी का कपड़ा आएगा. ये सारी चीज वॉज सपोज टू बी फॉर योर आर्टिसंस ओनली, फॉर दैट जजमानी थिंग, इकोनॉमिक एस्पेक्ट ऑफ दैट जजमानी थिंग. आज क्या हो रहा है कि कहीं एक दुकान में जा रहे हो, वहां से सारा चीज सभी खरीद के लेके आ रहे हो, तो वो दैट मॉडल इज नॉट Jajmani model any more than. I think is clear. I think,
yeah, just to add to what he said, when a yajna is performed, as is rightly said, we have a list of items to be procured. So if you are taking ghee from someone in the village who is having cows, that's a boon to the society. If you are bringing ghee from Amul, it's in fact devastating for the society. So we should realize that when anything is to be procured, it has to be procured from the manufacturer, and that has to be in your village. It has to be some artisan. And this open market was actually a curse. We didn't believe in open market whatsoever. Now people are going all praises for open market. But I'll give you a small example. Here in Surendranagar district, there are some weavers. They make something which is called pachedi in Gujarati. So it's a kind of thing which is used by Bharwad community. Bharwad are people who are grazing cows and buffaloes. So they give this pachedi only to some Bharwads. They will not give it to anybody else. And the Bharwad will take it from some specific weavers only from one particular village. They will not take it from anybody else. Now people say that this is a hindrance to the liberalization, this is a hindrance to the local open market. But in fact, because our economics was so deeply woven, everybody's welfare was ensured. As he said that everybody had so much of silver on their bodies, this is because it was ensured that we will not let someone become a billionaire or a trillionaire. And that's why this kind of checks and balances were kept in our systems. So it's very important that ऐसी इस तरह के जो भी संस्कार होते हैं वहाँ पे दुकान में से कुछ ना लाया जाए ना. ट्रेडिंग हैज़ टू बी हैपन, दैट हैज़ टू हैपन आउटसाइड. गांव के अंदर व्यापार को पाप माना जाता है. व्यापार गांव के बाहर होता है, गांव के अंदर लेन देन होता है, गांव के बाहर व्यापार होता है. तो बहुत सारी चीज़ें हैं कि जिसमें काफ़ी मिसनॉमर से हम लोग घिरे हुए हैं. व्यापार कहाँ पर होता है, लेन देन कहाँ पर होता है, रिश्ता कहाँ पर होता है. एज कनक सभापति जी rightly mentioned that we are a relationship oriented society, and any transaction which is not backed by a relation is a total failure. So every transaction that happens in the society has to be backed by a relation, and that relation will go on for generations together. And that is how the entire fabric will be woven so tightly that nobody can break it. But unfortunately, that had happened in the colonial times. बट ये सारी चीज़ों के ऊपर अगर गांव में कुछ होने लगे, एंड इनफैक्ट गुरुजी वाज इनफैक्ट वेरी कीन ऑन डूइंग दिस, कि अगर पुरोहितों के साथ काम हो, दे आर परफॉर्मिंग ऑल दिस पूजा, ऑल दिस संस्कार एंड एवरीथिंग. सो इफ दे स्टार्ट इंसिस्टिंग कि कपड़ा विमल का नहीं चलेगा, कपड़ा वीवर का चलेगा, नॉट विमल। घी अमूल का नहीं चलेगा, घी गाय पालने वाले का चलेगा। सो इफ दे स्टार्ट इंसिस्टिंग ऑन दिस, खाना पत्तल में खाया जाएगा, थर्मोकॉल में नहीं खाया जाएगा। खाना बैठ के खाया जाएगा, बुफे में नहीं खाया जाएगा। जस्ट बाय मेकिंग सम स्मॉल चेंजेस इन आवर डे टू डे एफर्ट्स एंड रिचुअल्स एंड पूजाज, द एंटायर सिनारियो कैन चेंज ड्रास्टिकली। बट देन वी हैव टू हेल्प बेंट ऑन दिस कि हम लोग प्लास्टिक ग्लासेस यूज नहीं करेंगे। विल ब्रिंग पॉट्स फ्रॉम कुमार, उसी में हम लोग पानी देंगे, उसी में हम लोग चाय देंगे, उसी में हम लोग छाछ देंगे। Very small efforts then we can take up as individuals, but that is going to revive the entire economic scenario.
I, I, I think I have been a bit misunderstood. The point is, what I asked is not about the Vedic rituals. What I asked is, like, for example, the land owner in South India is called the Yajaman. Essentially, it means that the agriculture that he does itself is a Vedic yajna. So this element of sacred has always been there with our each and every craft. And what is the economic impact of this, and whether we can adapt this particular sacred dimension in our crafts, that is the Vedic part of it, to the economy. That was actually what I intended to ask.
Correct. And in fact, yesterday, I think as Ranganji rightly mentioned about Panchayagya. So we have been, calling our day-to-day efforts, we also put them on the higher pedestal of a yajna. So basically, if I'm a farmer, I am doing a yajna of agriculture, and people who are consuming my product, they are my yajamans. So it's not that I'm going to market and selling my. We had so much of agriculture, और अन्न का व्यापार नहीं था तो खेती कैसे होती थी? खेती होती थी तो गांव में दिया जाता था, और दिया जाता था रैंडमली नहीं, रिश्ते के साथ दिया जाता था। ये सब कुछ एक पद्धति से चला करता था, और इसीलिए जो खेती करता है वो किसान को, on in this context only we can call that kisan as a purohit, and people who take grains from him as his yajmans. The same analogy can hold true for all the jatis. That can hold true for a cobbler, for a goldsmith, for a blacksmith, for a potter, for a carpenter, and for all of them. तो इस दृष्टिकोण से अगर हम देखेंगे तो ये पुरोहित यजमान की जो रिलेशन है वो हमें दिखेगा इन ईच एंड एवरी एफर्ट, बट इट हैज टू बी लुक्ड एट with that kind of divinity and that kind of sacredness.
Taking Arvind's point further, now there are, temple economics of a particular region would be based on that important temple only, or even local temple. Similarly, festival economics based on festivals, particular craftsmen, they will be engaged in this kind of work. Studies should be made on all these. Of course, with regard to temple economics, I know one or two people who are taking up studies in a smaller way, but we have to study this in the larger context, Indian context, yajna economics, temple economics, festival economics, and all. This is the need of the hour.
This has been a terrific session. I have thoroughly enjoyed each one of you. You spoke on various aspects. So I have a question as well as a comment following up on Dr. Professor Ajay's comment. I didn't even start. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So all of you experts, you have spoken about monetization, economic viability. These are concepts. You know, the the definitions could change depending on whether you're viewing the Western perspective versus the Eastern perspective and so forth. Definitions will change, but the concepts will never change. Going back to the Vedic times, we know examples that civilizations with kings, if they were fiscally careless, those civilizations, didn't last too long. Okay, given that history, given the Vedic depths that India has, how do we educate the younger generation so that they know right from school levels, um, uh, you know, school levels that they need to recognize. We all need to recognize. We can sit and criticize West did this, East did that. At the end of the day, we live in a globalized world. We have strengths dating back to 10,000 years ago. How do we bring them without disturbing the principles of monetization and economic viability? No, somebody can build statues, sell them free of cost. That's not going to last too long. We know that. There are many, many economic principles that will tell us that's not a sustainable economic model. So, this hybridization of the depth of Vedic knowledge with modern economic theories, with an equation that we all must coexist in this globalized world, is extremely important, in my opinion.
I fully agree. You are a scientist, I suppose, right? No, why I'm saying this is there is a famous, I was mentioning to Deepaliji yesterday, there's a famous series in English, a book series called Dead Famous. It talks about scientists and in common English language with cartoons and blurbs there and explain what Newton was doing. And I think similar, there is a scope for similar books for our students. When Chanakya, you can have some cartoons, some important quotes. Now, when I talked about ashrama system, or if you want to come a book with on economics, say Modigliani's life cycle hypothesis. On the other side, you can have a blurb with a our Shukracharya having saying, "Arey, I said this millennia ago, ashrama system." I think some of this way of conveying through books, I think it's a great possibility for me, so that we can convey to the students.
But for which we have to study what is happening at the ground level now. We cannot understand Indian economy through the textbooks that are presented based on Western ideas.
Now, I thank all the scholars for sharing their valuable insights with us. And after this, we'll have a 20 minutes tea break. For all the faculty members, we have arrangement on the left hand side. And for our experts, we have an arrangement on the right hand side. Let's be back in 20 minutes. We have the fourth session lined up. Thank you.